So yeah, this is a tag from Gabi, the fragrantician. I do recommend. Oh, look at them, they're lovely. They smell nice, some random red flowers, but yeah, I recommend you go check out Gabi's channel. It's a lot of fun. Gabi has a big personality and is a great person, and yeah, so I was tagged basically to do a video all about well, Gabi's fragrances she wore in the 80s, I think, that she still wears now. I've gone for the 2000s, which is pretty much when I started choosing what I wore, you know, and bought what I wanted, kind of perfume. So seems a good decade. Some caveats with me, obviously. I only probably wore one or two different ones. So the ones that I wore, ones that influenced me, ones that I wear nowadays from back then. So yeah, obviously our tastes have changed quite a bit, but there are some definite standout legends from that era, aren't there? So yeah, we'll just get cracking on. So first up on the list is an obvious one. That's Joop Homme, isn't it? Which is obviously a legend from the late 80s, 89 I believe. But it was the first one I owned. And it was also the one I wore the most up until that point. Here's them flowers, they're clover. Oh, they're just all pretty little clovers. They are nice them, aren't they? So yeah, I think we all know what it was. It's known as the Pink Beast, kind of groundbreaking, absolute legend of a fragrance. And pretty much a lot of these are what basically everyone wore in that era. But this one was orange blossom, kind of cough syrupy, heliotrope, musks, jasmine, a lovely sweet jasmine. It's quite a heavenly one. It was never the most natural smelling or modest, timid fragrance, but it was damn good, I'll tell you that. And yeah, pretty much everyone wore it. One or two sprays would fill an entire stadium. It's a classic, and I thought I smelled damn amazing. And yes, it's one I definitely still wear nowadays. Not as often as I did, but I know when I smell it. Obviously it's got that familiarity complex about it. Everyone kind of knows it. Everyone still loves it. I mean, apart from in Fragcon where it gets a load of grief because it's really popular. And you know, it's not some poncy French perfume. This is not French. This cannot be a classique. It's that kind of attitude, isn't it? It's so popular that it's hated. A bit like Dior Sauvage, which I admit I hate. But not because it's popular, it doesn't wear on me very well. But I've got to admit, that's a classic. I'm not bitter. So yeah, that's Joop. Next is a very obvious kind of classic one for me. I didn't wear this, but pretty much every girlfriend of that era I had wore it. These feels are gorgeous for this red. But that's Mugler's Angel. Yes, that's right, Angel. We all kind of know this. That kind of starts off a bit fruity, and it just becomes this like coconutty, not coconutty, chocolatey, patchouli kind of weird kind of gourmand, wasn't it? Some say the first gourmand, and literally everyone had that little star bottle, didn't they? And I had many exes who well oversprayed it, and my god, it was choking. When the EDT came along, it was a little bit fresher, a little bit easier, but no, none of them like that. Obviously it was all Angel, so you'd walk into a nightclub, it'd just be filled with Angel and Joop and various others that'll probably be mentioned in this video. Nothing against them, it wasn't a great love of mine, and obviously it has that connection and memories to it, and it's a bittersweet one. I don't hate the fragrance, but you can't help be sort of transported back, can you really? And it's another groundbreaking one. I'm not going to go on about Mugler and what's happened to them. This Mugler back then was a completely different brand. It was creative, innovative, you know, spent money on it. It didn't have 7.5 billion flankers that got absolutely nothing to do with the original, and then flankers of flankers. It wasn't a terrible brand, but it, like it is now, it was brilliant. An Angel started it all for them, really, didn't it? That was the first superstar one, and I believe with Angel and Alien, may come up later, they weren't immediate successes. But my God, 20 odd years later, you know, it's still as big as ever, it's still as popular. The new version isn't kind of a touch on what it used to be, but yeah, Mugler's Angel, love it or hate it, it's a special one, and it certainly is an iconic one from that era. Next up from me is Burberry Touch. Now this one, I think it was relatively new when I bought it, and obviously Burberry has a bit of a name, doesn't it, as a kind of, well, it is a chav brand, isn't it? All that bloody horrible Burberry patterns, and the Burberry caps and Burberry scarves and stuff, so it's a bit like, you know, when you're smelling stuff. But you know what, it was actually really nice, really nice. I instantly enjoyed it, and it's kind of this white pepper, powdery violet, sweet violet leaf, woody kind of pencil shavings kind of thing going on, and it's it used to be back in the day absolutely massive again, and mega sweet, to the point of being quite obnoxious, really, not gonna lie. A little like Joop. It was obnoxiously sweet and loud and would fill, but it was one of them that you'd wear to go clubbing. I think that's literally the only time I wore it. Nowadays it's a much more tamed down version. I kind of wear it still for nostalgia and whatnot, and it smells magnificent. It introduced me to my love of violet, I guess. And although violet flower's not listed, trust me, it's there with the sweetness and the powderiness and all of that. It's an exceptional fragrance. Don't need to waffle on for no apparent reason, so that's Burberry Touch from Burberry. Now next is one that doesn't seem to really exist nowadays. And I know it's supposed to be ones that are still kind of popular now, but it must do. All these red clovers, they smell absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, it's Diesel Zero Plus, I think it was called, in a little red bottle. Now I'm saying it doesn't exist nowadays, there are a lot of things kicking about that do exist. Now obviously I looked this up on Fragranza to kind of find what I was looking for. What's listed on Fragrantica is nonsense. If they were the official listed notes, nah. This was basically the chav spray of the 2000s. It was all it smelt of. It's coconut hairspray with a slight hint of fruitiness. It was so strong, you could smell it from 50,000 miles away. And it's all chavs, all townies where I went to uni wore this one. Literally anywhere you walked. I don't know how it wasn't the most popular selling fragrance of all time. I believe it was quite affordable back when diesel were a little bit cheaper and not above themselves like they are nowadays. Was it unique? Nope. Was it bloody awful? Yup. Thankfully I didn't date a lass who wore it, but when some of their friends did, or whenever you could smell it, my God, it would make you feel sick. It was so astringent, so sharp, but like, you know, really cheap coconut, like I literally say, coconut hairspray. And that most certainly takes me back now. Nowadays I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there are so many still like it. And given that was the first one I ever smelt like that, maybe it did start a trend that kind of bounced back decades later. Obviously nowadays you've got added cashmere and ambroxan in, because that's creativity, folks. But yeah, Diesel Zero Plus, or whatever the heck it was called, that is certainly one that takes me back to them days, and is still around, not as that fragrance, but still around in many forms nowadays. Next is kind of the first, let's call it impulse buy, unplanned buy I ever got. I've told this story so many times. That's Boss Soul. Walked into Boots, which is like an overpriced pharmacy slash something shop. I don't know what it reckons it is. Vastly overpriced, but it's to get them lasses who come up to you like, "Want to try this?" It's like, not really, no thanks, because some of them, I'm not gonna lie, I feel quite sick off excessive fragrances and certain ones. But anyway, she laced me in it, and we walked around the shop. Obviously bought this ex of mine, whatever crap she wanted. So that's the way it went, and walked round and round and round. I come to leaving the door, and I kind of took another smell. I was like, ooh, what is this? This is beautiful. And so yeah, that's that story. It's kind of cardamom, citrus, woody things. There's a bit of lavender in it. Yes, it is sounding a bit familiar to a certain other big one that was famous around that time. It has a bit of La Nuit de l'Homme about it, but this one is somewhat, it was richer, it was more floral. I don't know what florals were in it, but there were florals, and it's just a really beautiful, magnificent fragrance. I suppose these kind of citrusy cardamom ones are popular now, and there's quite a few of them back in the day. It was nothing like extraordinary, and it's because it had night. It did have a kind of, you remember when fragrances used to be called night? They'd have this certain dark, fruity, floral feel about them. I think it's one of them again that kind of opened my eyes to, do you know what, I bloody love these kind of floral fragrances, me. And it became a signature for many years. With Joop, probably 4 or 5 bottles, and I still have it now. I still have a little 40ml, I think it is, a weird size, I know, that I still occasionally spray. It hasn't turned yet, and it does take me back. Nowadays you kind of realise it ain't now special, but it's a good fragrance, good memories. So that's Boss Soul. Next is one I often wonder whether it ever existed. It did. I found it on Fragrantica and that. It did exist. Mustn't have existed for very long. It was Armani White, and it was in this little white tube. Now there is a woman's version that I think is still about. The man's version is not. Definitely not, because it's so hard and no one ever knows what the heck I'm talking about. And I believe maybe the Armani Black is still about of the man's, but whatever. Anyway, this was, as you'd imagine, it was kind of this Italian style, citrusy, kind of creamy one. Was a magnolia or something? It's orange, I think, and lemon and stuff like that. Now, obviously, this isn't about nowadays. Was it like Acqua di Gio and stuff like that? Not really. It was a lot fresher. It popped. I suppose you could call it like one of the modern Acqua di Parma ones. Not the same, but it had that kind of, you know, that Mediterranean vibe. There was rosemary in it, as I remember. It's quite herbaceous, quite citrusy, very Italian Mediterranean coast kind of fragrance, which were quite lovely. And I didn't own anything like that, and I've not really owned any citruses since it. I polished through the bottle really quick. It's probably one of them that I just burnt through in the summer and was like, it's gone, move on to the next thing. So it never really appealed to me, but it does take me back to, you know, hot summers, going to the park, big open space park, you know, having a few beers. We'd have barbecues and stuff. All this time whilst I was at uni, and it was kind of fresh. I do remember it wasn't the strongest one in the world, and I think I quite like that delicacy about it, and it wore beautifully in that. And nowadays, like I say, there are a lot of fragrances like it. It was nothing outstanding. You know, there's always going to be these citrus aromatic fragrances, but it's special to me because I did own one. And nowadays I do have a couple of citrusy ones and the odd aromatic one, and I suppose it reminds me of them good old days, doesn't it? So that's Armani White. Next is another classic that was massive back then, and that's from Chanel. I know Chanel. That's Coco Mademoiselle. Now again, this was not really, it was them years, that era still of uni, but it tended to be the lecturers, or when we'd go out, like the old, what we call back then older women, who were, you know, 25 to 30. Them were the days when they were older women, isn't it? And it kind of was everywhere. And again, it was not a common DNA anyone had smelt, and you always, a lass who wore it would have a certain stride and a certain kind of attitude about it, be very confident and smart and stuff. This is just me stereotyping the women I met who wore this, but it was this kind of mega massive, huge kind of citrusy fruitiness, with this kind of dry trail of the patchouli. I wouldn't have known what patchouli was back then, really. I would have in different circumstances maybe, but it's just this dry patchouli and this kind of muskiness about it, and it was just absolutely massive. It was bright, it was a kind of happy fragrance, and it did kind of draw you in. Yeah, I mean, we all know what Coco Mademoiselle is, but even back then it was a legendary one that sort of fitted a certain person. And look, these crocus still, I don't know, beautiful. But yeah, it was beautiful, made an impression, and then years later I'd start wearing it because it was really nice. Again, it's not one exes really wore, but like I say, managers and lecturers and such back in them day, it kind of stick with me from them as well. So it's Coco Mademoiselle from Chanel. Next is, of course, I mean, it has to be there because it was everywhere, but there was you had your Joop people and you had your Lamal people. Now obviously Jean-Paul Gaultier Lamal was iconic, absolutely iconic, and it was one of them. In the same way I tried to get, you know, partners of that time to wear the ones I loved, they always tried to get me to wear Lamal. But it wasn't really for me. But back then it was very sweet as well, wasn't it? And this is coming from a Joop lover. It was a big sweet bomb. It was basically, the best way to describe it is this big sweet lavender, a hint of mint, which kind of made it something a bit different. And the vanilla, there's probably who knows what's listed nowadays. That's what it was, and it was kind of, it was unique because it did remind you of, slightly, it had that, obviously this was the point, that slight hint of something we'd have smelt in the past, you know, like a splash on aftershave. It had that kind of fougere touch, but very modern, very sweetened up, and it's kind of a different kind of person used to wear Lamal. I'd even go as far as saying perhaps a bit more kind of smartly dressed. Maybe they were a slight bit older than us. It's obviously the perfume, well, I'd say the perfume was older. It's not as old as Joop Homme. I don't know, it just didn't seem to have as much character or charisma about it. But again, I've never worn it, never owned it, never particularly want to. It was Ultramal, which was much later, that I got as a kind of clubbing kind of thing. But Lamal, yeah, it was a classic, and I can't say anything bad about it. And that's definitely one that's still around nowadays. It's kind of changed so much. It gives you a nod to them days. You know what I mean? You'll smell it and go, oh, I can kind of remember going out and this been everywhere. But it's not the same. It's very washed out nowadays, and not so much the same. And I'm not a big fan of the 8.7 billion flankers that are kind of the same, but no, not. And the parfum and the this and the that. It's alright. It's a classic from the time. I mean, I'll give it that. Certainly legendary back in the 2000s and the late 90s and stuff. But nowadays, it's kind of meh, isn't it, really? Maybe if it was still the same fragrance as it used to be, it would probably be better. But yeah, that's Lamal. Meh. Next is Dior Homme. Now, obviously, I didn't wear Dior Homme back then. I'm not going to lie, I probably didn't even know of his existence. That was much later on in my journey. But it was about, and it wasn't specifically, I'm talking about Dior Homme here, but specifically, it was them more floral fragrances that started to appear around then. Very overtly floral fragrances. And again, it gives me that kind of, do you know what, maybe I do like lavender sometimes kind of feel about it. That kind of irisy thing. I suppose it kind of pushed me more towards, do you know what, I quite like these powdery flowers and this kind of waxy floral kind of feel. And obviously nowadays I wear the heck out of it. We're talking about the original here. By original I don't mean the silver stem one, because I've got no recollection of what that was like. But the one after that, the one I own, oh yeah, it's good. It's also got a kind of chocolatiness about it, which again back in them days was quite unique, especially in the male marketed fragrances. It's kind of got the iris mixing with, there's probably cocoa in it. It kind of gives this lovely chocolatey glow, and it's lovely, but it's also got this bright freshness from the citruses, and again, like I said, I discovered citruses back then. It's just all round a really classy, elegant fragrance. Now the Dior Homme 2020, just, it ain't Dior Homme, is it? I don't have a beef or an issue with that. And every iteration after it, they've got rid of it. What can we do? Can't complain. But it's more the floral aspect of this fragrance that particularly has lasted me from that period of time to this period. And obviously loving Dior Homme now, and not really been aware of it back then. Dior's and Chanel's were a little bit mature for me at that age, let's say. Great fragrance, that's Dior Homme. And finally, we knew it was coming, it's here. Mugler's Alien, the greatest fragrance ever made. I can just say that, I can mean it, I don't need to think about it. This, like I've explained before, the only fragrance I've ever chased someone down the road to go, oh my god, what are you wearing, love? And I go, no, it wasn't quite like that. It's this Mugler's Alien. It's really nice, isn't it? I was like, oh yes, it's heavenly. I'll have to get that for my girlfriend. I was no hussy back then. No girlfriend would ever wear it, of course, because it just smelled too good for them, what can I say? But we kind of know what Mugler's Alien is. It's that kind of dark jasmine, the dark musks. It's kind of the first time really white musks were that prominent and stuff, and the cashmere, in which actually just did what cashmere is supposed to do, kind of had a warm richness to the base, not completely be all the fragrance is, but it was that dark magical jasmine, like a jasmine no one had ever spelt. Alien was the greatest name for it, and it had this kind of, I think Dr. Claire describes it, the kind of camphorous feeling, this sort of anisey kind of dark, well, you know what I mean, menthalness, that's a better word, isn't it? That was there, and it's just, and it lasted forever, and the musks in it was a big one. And this again was specific types of people wore it, you know. You wouldn't really see angel wearers go for Alien, much to my bitter disappointment, because I loved it. I did, even back then, try to wear it myself, but it was too big on me, too massive, which always sounds weird when, you know, you say your first fragrance was Joop Homme, but I couldn't really wear the big obnoxious ones. I couldn't carry it off. But there were men who wore it back then. There was, you know, it was the era of metrosexuality and people not being arses or stupid about things like this. Although stuff was marketed towards it, it suited everyone. But yes, alas, and it just, my catnip, will make my legs turn to jelly. I just want to bury my neck into it, be it some beautiful lady or an old lady on the bus. I'd still want to bury my nose in their neck and be like, oh, this is just heaven. There's no fragrance that's ever come close to it. What we have nowadays, I know, I just need to throw it out there, ain't Alien. It's some washed out bad clone of what Alien used to be, with excessively stupid amounts of cashmere and a kind of, it's almost like a, I know it sounds weird to say, but when you next smell it, it's almost got this kind of babyfied pinkness about it, this kind of innocence, and this kind of, it's just not Alien, it's just not. So yeah, that's Mugler's Alien. Now, I mean, that's the end of the video. I would make it into a tag on and follow on Gabi's tag. If you want to do it, but I know tags are pretty, not really a thing nowadays. If I said, oh, you get free PR, there'd be, you know, 12 billion people that do it, wouldn't they? So that's basically what YouTube is more or less becoming. There's some great folks about. I mean, Tammy, Yulia, if you fancy doing it, you know, it'd be great to see from you two. Or Claire, or Em, or, you know, Lizzie, anyone really. It's just interesting to look back, and obviously we're all from different eras, and I know I kind of bent and twisted it a bit, but these fragrances, pretty much all of them, in one way, shape or form, have endured to modern times. They're still big now. There's DNAs, well, apart from Dior Homme, oddly, isn't it? Which has been completely got rid of, but there are so many fragrances like that still about, so I suppose it counts. And obviously ones that others wore that have kind of lingered on, and you get that big feeling of nostalgia, don't you? And I sort of presuming Gabi picked a golden era for herself, and I suppose I picked my golden era there. So do you still wear fragrances from back then? Are you like me? Are the kind of reformulations generally disappointing? But actually, with, like I say, with Joop and Burberry Touch, they're not that disappointing because they've tamed them a bit, but kept all the original kind of feel and DNA of them. Alright folks, thanks for watching, bye.